I never thought I'd find myself running from a life I'd built brick by brick in the sun-baked valleys of Catalonia, only to end up shivering in a forgotten cold storage unit on the edge of the Spanish wilderness. But there I was, Eliza Harper, 32, married to a man whose touch had grown as familiar and cold as these stone mountains, and utterly, hopelessly in love with a woman who'd wandered into my world like a storm off the Atlantic. It started innocently enough, the way these things do in small towns where everyone knows your business but pretends not to. I'd moved to the Pyrenees foothills 5 years ago with my husband Tom, chasing his dream of turning our savings into a vineyard. He was all ambition and easy charm, the kind of guy who could sell ice to Eskimos, or in our case imported California grapes to skeptical locals. I was the quiet one, the American expat with a degree in literature who traded New York lofts for olive groves, thinking it'd be romantic. We bought a modest finca outside Rapal, whitewashed walls and terracotta roofs, where I'd spend mornings tending roses and afternoons pretending the ache in my chest was just homesickness. Tom thrived. The vineyard took off, locals warmed to his Midwestern grin, and we even hosted harvest festivals that drew tourists from Barcelona. But me? I wilted. The isolation gnawed at me, the endless blue skies that felt more like a cage than a canvas. That's when Faith showed up, like she'd been conjured from the pages of one of those dog-eared novels I smuggled from the village library. She was 28, a freelance photographer from Madrid with a beat-up Land Rover, and a portfolio of black and white shots that captured the soul of forgotten places. She'd come to document the Pyrenean shepherds for some glossy magazine, renting a cabin up in the pines where the air smelled of pine sap and regret. Our paths crossed at the weekly market in Rapal, me haggling over heirloom tomatoes, her snapping candids of old women in black shawls. She caught me mid-laugh, wind tousling my auburn waves, and later that week, she showed up at our finca with prints in hand. "Thought you might like this," she said, her green eyes sharp as the serrated peaks behind her, holding out a photo of me that made my cheeks flush. It wasn't just the way she'd framed the light on my freckled skin. It was the way she saw me, not Tom's wife, not the expat oddity, but Eliza, alive and unguarded. We started with coffee, then hikes. She'd drag me up trails I'd never dared alone, pointing out wild Edelweiss and the distant silhouette of Montserrat. Faith talked like poetry wrapped in grit, stories of her abuela's Civil War tales, the Madrid art scene where she'd come out at 16 and lost half her family in the fallout. She was unapologetic, her short dark hair always windswept, her laugh a rumble that echoed off the cliffs. I envied that freedom, the way she wore her queerness like a badge, not a burden. Tom noticed, of course. "New friend?" he'd ask over paella, his blue eyes narrowing just a fraction. I'd nod, forcing a smile, blaming it on the wine. But nights alone while he snored beside me, I'd trace the curve of Faith's jaw in my mind, wondering what it would feel like under my fingers. The first time we kissed, it was under a thunderstorm in late spring. We'd been caught out on a ridge, rain lashing our faces, her hand steady on my waist as lightning cracked the sky. "You're shaking," she'd murmured, close enough that I could smell the earth on her skin. And then her lips were on mine, soft, insistent, tasting of salt and storm. I pulled back first, gasping, my wedding ring glinting like an accusation in the flash. "I can't," I whispered, but my body betrayed me, leaning in for more. Guilt became my shadow after that. I'd wake at dawn, slip out to the vineyard rows, and cry among the vines, begging forgiveness from a God who'd long since stopped listening. Tom and I hadn't been intimate in months. Our marriage was a comfortable routine, like the click of rosary beads my Catholic mother had drilled into me back in Ohio. But Faith? She was fire, awakening parts of me I'd buried under layers of shoulds. We met in secret, stolen afternoons in her cabin, where she'd brew strong café con leche, and we'd lose hours to conversations that peeled me bare. She'd trace maps on my palm with her fingertip, plotting escapes to the Costa Brava or back to her Madrid haunts. "You deserve more than this half-life, Eliza," she'd say, her voice low and fierce. I'd nod, tears pricking, but the ring on my finger felt heavier each time. By summer's end, the affair was a living thing between us, tender and terrifying. We'd drive up to the higher trails, away from prying eyes, and make love with the windows down, the Pyrenees watching like ancient guardians. Not frantic, not desperate, just slow, reverent, like we'd been starving for years. Her touch was a revelation. Gentle on my scars from a childhood appendectomy, reverent on the stretch marks from the miscarriage we'd never talk about. "You're beautiful," she'd whisper, and for the first time I believed it. But paradise in the mountains is fleeting. Fall brought the first frost and with it whispers. A neighbor saw us too close at the market. Tom's cousin, visiting from Barcelona, mentioned that photographer woman with a smirk. Tom started staying late at the co-op, his questions sharper. "Where were you today?" I'd lie, hating the taste of it, the way it soured our dinners. One night, after too much Tempranillo, he cornered me in the kitchen. "Is there someone else, Eliza?" His voice was steady, but his hands trembled on the counter. I froze, the ring burning my skin. "No," I lied, and he believed me, or wanted to. We made love that night for the first time in ages, mechanical and hollow, his eyes searching mine for ghosts. Faith sensed the shift. "You're pulling away," she said during our next hike, her boots crunching leaves like brittle bones. I couldn't meet her gaze. "Tom. He suspects." She stopped, the wind whipping her flannel. "Then leave him. Choose us." Her words hung there, a gauntlet thrown. I wanted to, God, how I wanted to, but the life we'd built, the vows, the fear of becoming the villain in my own story. It chained me. Winter crept in like a thief, blanketing the valleys in snow. The vineyard dormant, Tom buried in ledgers, and I in isolation. Faith's assignments took her away, to Seville, to the Basque Coast, but she'd return with gifts. A leather-bound journal, a vial of saffron from La Mancha. Each one a tether pulling me deeper. It was mid-December when the storm hit, the kind that closes, passes, and strands you. I'd driven up to her cabin unannounced, desperate after another fight with Tom over drifting apart. She opened the door in socks and a sweater, surprise melting into that smile that undid me. We spent the night talking, not touching, just sharing the fire's warmth. "I love you," she said at dawn, snow piling against the panes. "Not like a friend. Like everything." I echoed it back, the words a dam breaking. But as the storm raged, so did my doubts. What kind of woman cheats on her husband? What kind of Catholic betrays her vows? Faith held me through it, her arms a sanctuary, but I could feel the fracture lines forming. Little did I know the real storm was brewing back home. Tom had found the journal I'd hidden, the one with pressed edelweiss and scribbled poems about green eyes and stolen breaths. He didn't confront me. Not yet. Instead, he waited, patient as the vines he tended, for the perfect moment to uproot us all. As the year turned, the Pyrenees grew unforgiving, mirroring the cold settling in my marriage. Faith and I clung to our moments, but each goodbye felt like a rehearsal for the end. I didn't see the betrayal coming. Not from him, not from the life I'd clung to, but in the deep freeze of those mountains. Love has a way of thawing truths you never wanted to face. The new year dawned brittle and bright, the snowpack heavy on the branches like unspoken accusations. Tom and I entered a fragile truce, the kind forged in silence and forced smiles at village gatherings. He'd taken to long drives into the city, claiming supplier meetings, but I caught the scent of cologne that wasn't his, subtle, foreign like sandalwood from some Barcelona boutique. Jealousy flickered in me, not for love lost, but for the hypocrisy it mirrored. If I could stray, why couldn't he? Faith, oblivious at first, threw herself into a new project, photographing the winter shepherds, those hardy souls who herded sheep through blizzards with nothing but wool and will. She'd invite me along sometimes, bundled in her spare parka, the two of us trailing the flocks up treacherous paths. There, amid the bleeding and the bite of wind, we'd steal glances, her mittened hand brushing mine, a shared thermos of hot chocolate warming more than our fingers. "You're distant," she said one afternoon, as we paused on a ridge overlooking the frozen Ter River. The world below was a watercolor of whites and grays, ethereal and unforgiving. I shrugged, kicking at a drift. "Just the season. Makes everything feel heavier." She didn't buy it, those green eyes piercing like they could see the ring's weight dragging me down. "Talk to me, Eliza. We're in this together." But were we? The question haunted me. Faith was all in, posters of us, cropped faces, anonymous trails, tacked to her cabin walls, playlists of Joni Mitchell and Spanish folk ballads she'd made for our road trip someday. She'd even started Spanish lessons online, practicing conjugations with me over wine. Te amo, present tense. Always. It was intoxicating, that certainty. Yet every time I drove back to the finca, the gold band on my finger mocked me, a talisman of the life I couldn't quite dismantle. Tom's absences grew. A week became 2. Then a month of extended trips. He'd call from Girona or Lida, voice tinny over the line. "Miss you, Han Vineyard's safe, hired that kid from the village to watch it." I nodded to empty rooms, relief mingling with guilt. Was this freedom? Or just the slow unraveling of everything? In his absence, Faith and I bloomed. We'd hole up in her cabin during the worst squalls, cooking stews with foraged mushrooms, reading aloud from Lorca, her dramatic flair turning blood-wedding into prophecy. One evening, as sleet pelted the roof, she knelt by the hearth and pulled a small box from her pack. "Not a proposal," she said quickly, cheeks flushing under her olive skin. "But, promise, if you ever decide." Inside was a silver chain with a tiny edelweiss pendant, rough-hewn like the mountains themselves. I fastened it around my neck, hidden under my collar, and kissed her until the fire died to embers. That night we dreamed aloud, of a cottage in the Alps, or maybe back in the States, Portland's rainy streets where no one batted an eye at 2 women hand in hand. "We could adopt," she murmured into my hair. "Little ones with your freckles and my stubborn streak." The image lodged in my throat, sweet and sharp. But dreams are fragile in winter's grip. Early February brought a thaw that turned paths to mud, and with it Tom's return. He arrived unannounced, arms laden with cheeses from the coast and a bottle of cava. "Surprise!" he grinned, pulling me into a hug that smelled of travel and something sharper, betrayal's aftertaste. Dinner was civil. Talk of yields and weather, his hand on mine across the table like old times. But as we cleared plates he paused, fork midway. "Found this in the barn." He slid the journal across the wood, its pages splayed like an autopsy. My stomach dropped. The poems, the pressed flowers, evidence laid bare. "Tom, He held up a hand, eyes weary, not angry. "Don't. I've known for weeks. The neighbor, the drives. I followed you once, up to her place." The room spun, the Pyrenees pressing in through the windows. He wasn't yelling, that was worse. "I met someone too. In Barcelona. She's uncomplicated." The confession hung there, a mirror to my sins. We sat in silence, the cava untouched, until he spoke again. "What do we do, Eliza? End it? For the vineyard? For us?" The word was a ghost. I thought of Faith's pendant warm against my skin, the way her laugh chased shadows. "I love her," I whispered, the truth ablade. His face crumpled, not in rage but resignation. "Then go. But take the ring off first. It's not fair to any of us." He left the next morning for the city, papers drawn up for a quiet divorce. Assets split, no lawyers, just 2 Americans cutting ties in a foreign land. I drove straight to Faith's, tears blurring the snowy road. She met me at the door, concern etching her features. "What happened?" I collapsed into her arms, sobbing the story. The journal, Tom's affair, the freedom I'd never asked for but now clutched like a lifeline. She held me on the rug by the fire, stroking my hair. "This changes nothing. Everything." We made plans feverishly, me selling my share of the finca, her wrapping the Shepherd series for submission. By March, the divorce was filed, the vineyard sold to Tom's cousin. I moved into her cabin, our lives intertwining like vines on a trellis. Shared bank accounts, morning runs, lazy Sundays with market bread and her camera clicking away. Spring unfurled in riotous color. Poppies carpeting the valleys, the air humming with bees. We hiked to hidden meadows, Faith's hand firm in mine. No more hiding. Locals whispered, but in Rapal, scandals fade like mist. Tom sent postcards from Barcelona, neutral updates on his new chapter. Forgiveness bloomed tentative between us, not love, but respect for the wreckage we'd both wrought. For a while it was paradise reclaimed. Faith's Madrid agent called with a gallery show, our photos framed with stories of Pyrenean resilience. "It's us," she said, beaming. "The wild and the willing." I nodded, pendant glinting, finally free of the ring I'd pawned in a Girona shop, its proceeds funding our first real trip. A week in Andalusia, flamenco nights and sunsets over the Alhambra. But the mountains have long memories, and summer brought the first crack. Faith's ex from Madrid resurfaced, a sculptor named Carla, all charisma and old wounds. She'd email then call, just to catch up. Faith brushed it off, but I saw the shadow in her eyes, the way she'd linger over replies. Ancient history, she'd assure me, pulling me close. Yet doubt seated, watered by my own past insecurities. One humid July evening after a festival in the village square, lanterns swaying, accordions wailing, I found her phone buzzing on the counter. Carla's name, a string of hearts. I didn't snoop, I trusted. But when Faith stepped out for air, I glanced. Innocent photos, flirty banter. Miss our wild days. When are you in the city? Heart in my throat, I confronted her later, by the fireflies in the yard. What's going on? My voice shook, the old fears rising. She sighed, running hands through her cropped hair. Nothing. She's reaching out, that's all. After you, Eliza. I don't want anyone else. But the words rang hollow, and that night, she slept on the couch. The fracture widened. Arguments flared over small things. Her late shoots, my clinginess. You're still wearing his ghost, she accused one night, gesturing at nothing. The divorce was months ago. I shot back. But she was right. Tom's shadow lingered in my hesitations, my flinches at commitment. Faith, who'd given everything, started pulling away. Her Rover packed more often for city gigs. By August, the air thickened with unspoken endings. She confessed over coffee one dawn. Carla's show opening. I'm going for work.
Inadid, bile rising.
Stay with her. The question slipped out, venomous. Her eyes flashed. If that's what you think, maybe we need space. She left for a week then too. I wandered the cabin like a haunt, the Pyrenees mocking my solitude. When she returned, it was with distance. A hug instead of a kiss, talks of figuring things out. Betrayal's sting was mutual now, a cycle we'd unwittingly spun. Fall leaves turned gold, and with them our love teetered. I begged her to stay, to fight. We're worth it, I'd plead, echoing her words from winter. But the damage festered, old wounds reopening. One night, after a screaming match that echoed off the peaks, she packed a bag. I love you, Eliza. But I can't be your rebound from a life you never wanted. She drove off into the dusk, taillights fading like dying stars. I stood there, wind-whipping tears, the Edelweiss pendant cold against my chest. Alone again, in the place that had promised everything. Autumn in the Pyrenees is a cruel beauty. Leaves aflame one day, skeletal the next, stripping you bare before winter's deep freeze. Faith's absence carved a hollow in the cabin, her scent fading from the sheets, her camera gear a ghost in the corner. I tried to fill it. Long hikes alone, volunteering at the Ripoll Library to shelve English imports, even dating the vineyard's new owner, a kind widower named Javier with a gentle laugh. But his touch was wrong, too soft, too safe. I ended it after 2 dinners, blaming timing. Tom checked in sporadically, his Barcelona life settling into domesticity with his artist. You okay out there? He'd text, no edge left. Found someone. I'd lie, working on it. But the truth was sharper. I'd lost the one who saw me whole. Faith's social feeds, curated for work, showed her in Madrid lights, arm around Carla at openings, captions neutral but laced with subtext. Each post a knife twist. November brought the first heavy snows, blanketing the trails in white oblivion. I threw myself into a writing project, a memoir of expat folly, scribbling by candlelight when power lines snapped. Words poured out. The sting of Tom's indifference, the blaze of Faith's passion, the shame of my divided heart. It was cathartic but incomplete, ending mid-sentence on that July fight unresolved. Then a storm unlike any before. Meteorologists called it a bomb cyclone. Rare for these latitudes, dumping feet of powder overnight. Power out, roads closed, I hunkered in the cabin, radio crackling warnings. On day 3, as wind screamed like banshees, a knock rattled the door, faint, insistent. I cracked it, snow blasting in, and there was Faith. Soaked, shivering, her Rover buried a mile back. Eliza, she gasped, collapsing into my arms. The pass closed. Had to hike. Her green eyes were wild, lips blue. I pulled her inside, stripping wet layers by the fire, wrapping her in blankets and my body for warmth. No words at first, just the crackle of flames and her teeth chattering against my shoulder. When color returned, she pulled back, searching my face. I'm sorry. For leaving. For everything. The floodgates opened then. She confessed. The Madrid pull, Carla's persistence, her own fears of not being enough after my marriage's shadow. I ran because it hurt too much to stay and watch you doubt us. I admitted my clinginess, the ghosts I dragged in. You were never the rebound. You were the revelation. We cried, laughed through shivers, the storm raging approval outside. That night as blizzards howled we rebuilt. Slowly, deliberately. No grand gestures, just truths. Her deleting Carla's number in front of me burning the old journal pages in the hearth. By morning the snow eased and with it our defenses. We made love for the first time since the fracture. Tender, reaffirming, her fingers tracing the pendant I'd kept. This is home, she whispered, and I believed her. But storms don't end cleanly. When the plows cleared the road 2 days later, a package waited at the village post from Tom. Inside, divorce papers signed and notarized with a note. For real this time. Be happy. Freedom absolute. Yet it stirred unease. Had he known about the storm, our reunion? Paranoia flickered. I'd glimpsed his car once near Ripoll, but dismissed it as coincidence. Faith and I emerged changed, cautious but committed. She extended her lease on the cabin. I submitted memoir chapters to a Barcelona lit agent. Spring teased early, crocuses pushing through melt, and we planned a joint exhibit of her photos with my words overlaid. Echoes of the Pyrenees. Locals warmed. Even the market ladies nodded approval at our linked arms. Yet conflict simmered beneath. Faith's wanderlust clashed with my rootedness. She'd talk of New York shoots. I'd panic at separation. We're stronger now, she'd soothe, but doubt lingered. One evening in April, after a gallery pitch in Barcelona, she came home late, eyes distant. Carla cornered me at the bar. Said, "Things." My heart seized. What things? She hesitated. That you settled. That I'm just the exciting phase before you go back to normal. Rage boiled. Not at her but the poison of pasts. And you believed her? She shook her head, but the seed was planted. Arguments reignited, sharper now, laced with what-ifs. I accused her of 1 foot out the door. She called me controlling, haunted by Tom's ghost. The cabin, once sanctuary, turned battlefield. Slammed doors, silent treatments amid blooming orchards. May brought the breaking point. Faith's agent offered a 6-month residency in Andalusia. Prestige, pay, a chance to breathe. Come with me, she pleaded over dinner, paella cooling untouched. I stared at my plate, the ring's absence a phantom itch. And what then? Follow you forever like some trailing vine. Hurt flashed in her eyes. Or stay here, trapped in what-ifs? She left the next week, bag light, kiss lighter. Space, Eliza. To miss each other. The cabin echoed empty. My memoir stalled on betrayal's chapter. I drove to Ripoll, seeking solace in the library's stacks, but found Tom instead, sipping coffee at the plaza, looking older, sadder. We talked awkwardly at first. His Barcelona fling had fizzled. He was back managing the old vineyard part-time. Heard about you and the photographer, he said, no malice. Happy for you. Lies bridged the gap. Shared laughs over expat absurdities, the wine we'd once loved. But as dusk fell, his hand brushed mine, comforting, familiar. If you ever need a friend. I pulled away, but the encounter lingered, a temptation to safety. Faith called that night, voice crackling from Seville. Missing you already. We talked for hours, raw and real, but distance amplified flaws. Whispers from Madrid reached me. Carla sightings, old flames rekindling. June's heat wave amplified the dread. I visited Faith once, the Alhambra's gardens a romantic backdrop, but tension crackled. A fight erupted over dinner. Her networking late nights, my jealousy. You're pushing me away, she yelled. Because you're not all in. I countered. She stormed out, leaving me in a rented room, staring at Alhambra lights like distant fires. Back in the Pyrenees, isolation crushed. Letters to my Ohio sister went unanswered. The memoir agent ghosted. Tom's visits increased, just checking on the place. His presence a balm and a curse. One rainy afternoon, wine flowing, he leaned in. I still love you, Eliza. As a friend. Or more if you'll let me. The offer dangled, easy erasure of the chaos Faith brought. I wavered, the wedding rings ghosts whispering normalcy. But as thunder rolled, I thought of green eyes, windswept hair. No, I said, standing. I can't go back. That night I drove into the wilderness, up the high trail to the old cold storage shed. A derelict from shepherd days, where Faith and I had once picnicked in summer. Snow from winter's end still patched the ground. The door creaked open to damp chill. I sat on a crate sobbing, the pendant clutched like a rosary. Hours passed, or minutes, time blurred. Then headlights pierced the dusk. Faith's Rover mud-splattered, pulling up like fate. She burst in, face pale. Tom called. Said you were spiraling. I came straight from the train. How he'd known I didn't ask, betrayal's web tangled still. She found me there, curled in the cold, and without a word pulled me into her arms. I'm here, she murmured, even as my hand, bare but scarred, brushed her cheek. The ring's absence screamed, but her hold silenced it. In that frozen moment, deep in the wilderness, love's drama peaked. Not in perfection but persistence. Summer solstice sun baked the Pyrenees, but in the cold storage's shadow, Faith and I forged a new pact. We talked till stars wheeled overhead. Her Andalusia doubts, my flirt with regression, the betrayals we'd both inflicted and endured. No more running, she vowed, tracing my palm. We're messy but we're ours. Dawn broke as we drove down, hands clasped over the gearshift, the Rover's engine a steady heartbeat. Rebuilding was gritty work, no fairy tale gloss. Faith cut the residency short, returning to the cabin with a compromise. Monthly Madrid trips for shoots, me tagging along when possible. I finished the memoir, titling it Vines and Veins, a nod to the blood we'd spilled and the roots we'd reclaim. The agent bit, a small press in Barcelona offering a modest advance. It's human, she wrote. Raw like the mountains. Tom faded gracefully, selling his share outright and heading stateside for family. His last note. You taught me love isn't possession. Be free. No bitterness, just quiet absolution. A human ending to our shared wreckage. Fall deepened our bond. We hosted a harvest potluck at the cabin. Locals with casseroles, Faith's photos projected on the wall. Whispers turned to toasts. An old shepherd even danced with us, his calloused hand light on Faith's shoulder.
La vida es corta, winked.
Life is short. Yet drama lingered in subtleties. Faith's ex Carla sent a final olive branch, a sculpture of intertwined branches, for new growth. Faith donated it to the Ripoll Museum, us laughing over the irony. My family? A tentative email from Mom. Heard you're happy. That's enough. No sermons, just grace. Winter returned softer this year. We decorated the cabin with Edelweiss wreaths. Faith teaching me Catalan carols by the fire. Intimacy deepened, not just bodies but souls. Her vulnerability about a childhood stutter. My confessions of buried queerness from college crushes I dismissed as phases. We argued still. Over burnt stews or forgotten anniversaries, but made up with walks, apologies wrapped in wool. By New Year's the exhibit launched in Barcelona. Echoes, her stark images of shepherds, overlaid with my prose on isolation and desire. Critics called it a lesbian odyssey in sepia tones, drawing crowds from Madrid's queer scene. Standing in the gallery, Faith's arm around my waist, pendant glinting under lights, I felt seen, not as Tom's wife or the expat, but as Eliza Whole. Spring brought the ultimate test. Faith's pregnancy scare. A missed cycle, panic tests in a Girona clinic negative, but the what-ifs cracked us open. Kids someday? She asked later, curled in bed. I hesitated, old fears of inadequacy rising. With you? Yes. We laughed through tears, planning adoptions or donors, dreams no longer deferred. But the true climax brewed in summer's heat, a wildfire sparked by lightning, racing down from the ridges toward Ripoll. Evacuations ordered, we packed the Rover in frenzy. Photos, manuscripts, the Edelweiss box. As flames lit the horizon, Faith gripped the wheel, me shotgun, barreling down switchbacks. If we lose the cabin, she started. We rebuild, I finished. Like us. The fire spared the village, scorching only fringes, a reminder of fragility. In its wake we cleared ash from trails, planting saplings with neighbors. Faith captured it all. Rebirth and ruin, her lens finding beauty in char. 2 years on, we've bought the cabin outright. Added a studio wing for her darkroom. My book sells modestly, readings in Barcelona drawing expats like us, seekers in foreign skins. We've adopted a rescue dog, a wiry mutt named Echo, who trails our hikes with boundless joy. Tom visits once with his new partner, a quiet engineer. We share lunch, stories flowing easy, no shadows. You look happy, he says, and I am fiercely, humanly. Faith and I marry in a civil ceremony on that ridge where we first kissed. Thunderstorm scars faded to memory. No rings, just the pendant and a tattoo on our wrists. Intertwined vines. Vows simple. In wilderness and warmth I choose you. The Pyrenees endure, eternal witnesses to our drama. Betrayals burned away. Love's embers glowing steady. It's not perfect. Conflicts flare like summer storms, emotions ebb like tides. But in the deep cold of doubt, she holds me still, reminding that humanity lies in the holding on, ring or no ring. And so, in this American-hearted corner of Spain, two women carve their story. Dramatic, raw, romantic as a Lorca verse. Not an end but a horizon wild waiting.